Now that we've looked at BigQuery ML, we can take a look at some other off-the-shelf models, but before we get too far into them, we should take a look at some of the terminology and how some of these operate. So, one thing that we want to think about before we get into some of these other models and training them and how all of this is going to work is that we're going to start using some cloud services. And cloud services do have some advantages. There are some advantages of working on your own desktop or working on your own computer that's right in front of you, but one of the nice things about working in the cloud is that you don't have to have any specialized hardware. Anything that you use can be used temporarily and then released, so you don't have to pay for it. You don't have to own all of those machines that you're going to use. In fact, you can take an entire army of machines and you can put them all together and leverage them effectively without having to own them. So it allows you to do things faster than if you were just doing them on one machine right in your bedroom. You can also centralize and manage data, which is really useful when you're dealing with security or you're dealing with access restrictions. All of that can help in the cloud. The other thing to think about with the cloud is that you have to think about regions. So, believe it or not, even the cloud is just a computer in a data center somewhere, and data centers are not ubiquitous. They're not every single place in the world. These data centers have a particular location, and not every cloud service has all of the exact same capabilities in every data center in the entire world. So this is where regions become a problem. If you think about your computer, like if you can imagine your computer, your processor, your disk, your memory, if they were all miles apart, you'd have to pay some significant network latency costs just to do basic things. So, and this becomes an issue when we're dealing in different locations and what is available, because moving data around still has a cost. There's a speed of light, which is, is fast, but when you're moving a lot of data, you can incur that cost. If you're trying to run one application in Singapore and run a different application in Chicago, that communication can cause some problems, or at least cause some delays. So you want your data and your training to all be in the same place. Moving data around might not be so easy. So there are a lot of cloud services for artificial intelligence. Google Cloud is one that we're going to take a look at because I'm familiar with it. But there are other ones as well. There's IBM Watson services, there's Amazon AI, there's the Microsoft AI platform on Azure. There's just a lot of different things out there. So you can take a look at all of them and you can explore them as you like. It's just that, since I've worked more with the Google Cloud capabilities, we'll probably explore most of those in the course. So machine learning models. A model is, we're going to build a model here, and a model is just a combination of code and data. So we take a model that is some kind of algorithm or some kind of code, and we train it with data, and that is then used to generate these predictions. So the model is going to be something that we can move around after it's trained. So we could train it in the cloud and then deploy it in our application somewhere else. So that way we can have a little bit of flexibility with the models themselves. We also, before we get into any type of programmatic development of models, we're going to take a look at some off-the-shelf models, black box models. Black box, we tend to call something black box if you can't really see into it, you can't really examine it. So, we refer to black boxes like the opacity. You can't actually inspect the details. It just sort of works. So with an off-the-shelf model, we often will provide the inputs that train it, but we don't really know what's inside or how it's operating. All that we know is that we're training it and then we're getting some predictions from it. So there are also pre-trained models, lots of different pre-trained models capable of solving a lot of different problems. You often see services built around these models. Then there's also transfer learning, which is a process where you take a model that's already trained on a lot of data, and then you use it and train it for a more specific purpose. So we'll get into those a little bit later in the course, but the idea behind these pre-trained models that can leverage transfer learning is they do something pretty well to start, and then they do something better and better to be trained for a specific purpose. So they allow you to get a head start on how all of this is going, or how you will do all of your training. We'll also look at Vertex AI models. There's a lot of different options there: image classification, object detection, tabular data forecasting, text sentiment analysis, video object tracking. There's a few more in there as well. And those are all models that you can just throw some data at, run the training, and then you have something you can leverage at the end of that process. This is going to be a supervised learning example. So when we looked at our bikes example previously, and in this next example, we're going to take data that is labeled. With the bikes data, we had information on durations so that we could try to predict that. With this image data, we're going to have a bunch of images that have a particular thing or another particular thing. We label those, and then we train the model to say, this is how we're going to inspect this one, and this is how we're going to inspect this other one. So the supervised learning will try to identify what does this label mean, like what makes it up, and then we can use that to, if we kind of think we see the same thing in the future, we can try to predict what that image is. Now with unsupervised learning, you're going to use unlabeled data, so you don't have to worry about that labeling process, and that's really used more for clustering or for pattern detection. So when we get started with an off-the-shelf model, we first have to find data, then we have to store it, we have to label it, we have to train a model, we want to evaluate the model, we have to deploy the model, and then we can utilize the model when all of that is done. So we're going to find images. You can find images on the internet, or you can make images if you'd like. That sometimes people will just take a bunch of pictures with their phone and use that. You upload the data to GCP, and we're going to label it in Vertex AI datasets. We're going to train an image classification model. We're going to view all of the information on that model. We'll deploy it to an endpoint, and then we'll send it some requests, just testing it so that we can kind of see how it operates and how it performs. So we're going to get into that in the next couple of videos. We'll explain a little bit about what each one of these steps are, and we'll learn a little bit of the details along the way. But for now, thank you for watching, and hopefully you'll get something out of these next few videos so we can see how all of this operates.